based out of Switzerland. She, being a journalist, she's a dynamic personality and an amazing life coach. She also contributes for so many reputed media houses. We are really delighted to have you with us, ma'am. Today, we also have with us Dr. Isam Anas Iqbal, Director, Vishisht School of Management. We are honored to have you with us, sir. Now, moving further with the program, I request Professor Kunal Indore to please present the welcome speeches.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible to you?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. A very good afternoon to all. I, Professor Kunal Didorkar, on behalf of Vishisht School of Management, welcome our Director, Sir, Dr. S.M. Anas Iqbal. It is our immense honor and pleasure to introduce and welcome our guest for today's online session, Mrs. Zoya Rasul, ma'am. She is engineering graduate and master in journalism. Wrote so many social economic based articles and reports published in reputed magazines and reports. Presently working as independent journalist and writer at Geneva, Switzerland. Today we got golden opportunity to listen her on the topic, will COVID-19 reshape the world? On behalf of all the dignitaries gathered here, I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Sir, should we go ahead?
Yeah. Zoya, please proceed. Yeah.
Hello everybody. Hope you all are doing well in the lockdown and this restricted movement. They have introduced me, so I don't think I need to add anything. So we'll just start with the topic. In this lecture, I'll just give you a brief outline of what we will be talking about. So we will see what is this virus, what is this crisis, and why is it impacting our world in such a big way. And then from that, we will look into how will it shape the globalization. Secondly, how will it shape the global organization, the world order that used to be in place till now and which was breaking any which way. So those two things. Then we will move on to global systems. There were already lots of, supranational, regional organization alliances which were in place, and we will see if those will change owing to this crisis. And then we will look at some of the positive outcomes which we can imagine that will come out of this crisis. So first let's talk about my voice is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So let's first talk about why this virus is impacting us in such a big way. See, viruses have been there. So there was starting from the Spanish flu, which was in like 100 years ago, and then we had AIDS, H1N1, Ebola, Zika virus, the Nipah virus, which was in Kerala. So they have been there. So what makes a coronavirus, or it's a part of a SARS virus, which is an acute, I'll not get into much technicalities because that's not my forte, but it's a part of a acute respiratory syndrome. That means it affects our lungs. And why this virus is so impactful world over, there is two reasons. One, other viruses, some of them were deadly but not as easily transmissible. The others were easily transmissible but were not as deadly. But this virus is a combination of both. So it is deadly. Secondly, it is very easily transmissible. And plus the origin of this virus. So the for example, Ebola, it was in West Africa. So West Africa, as important all countries are in globalization, but it is not the hub of global activity. But China, when we talk about Wuhan, where this virus broke out, it has a lot of industries are there. So so when China, being the engine of growth, being so centrally connected to almost all parts of the world, and at the center of manufacturing hub. So when something like this happens in China, the ripples were felt all over the world, and we are still feeling that. So just to give you a little sense of how impactful it is, Right now, 200 countries are battling this virus, and as we speak, around 4.6 million people have been tested positive. And in all likelihood, this is an an underestimation of the numbers, because I mean, I was just reading in the morning, just alone China, which reported just 82,000 something cases, it is said that only China alone had more than 6 lakh cases. So, I mean, there is a lot of fudging of the number, but still, if we go by the official numbers, 4.6 million cases, 3.2 lakh deaths worldwide, and, and countries are like, be it developed countries, superpowers, America, we are seeing it's just like failing like a, pack of cards. So countries are struggling to respond to the virus in a way that they see a collapse of everything. So what happened, just briefly touching on how it started, uh, the first case was like, we will never know when the first case was, but on 31st December, that is on the eve of the new year, that is when the China contacted the local office of WHO, and they told them like, see, we are having these issues. There are people who are falling sick, and they are having respiratory issues, and we think we have a epidemic. So it took another 1 month when uh, WHO notified the world that something is happening in China, which could be a health crisis. And it further took more time, that is on 12th March, that WHO said that it's a global pandemic. So in the matter of these many months, uh, the crisis has spiraled all over. And secondly, before Wuhan, the city which is the like epicenter of this virus, this breakout of the virus, before it went into a lockdown, 5 million people flew out of China. So can you imagine 5 million people from the ground zero of such an infectious disease traveling all over the world, carrying the infection, and the result is in front of us. So that's just a bit of it. Why? So I mean, this crisis, which was originally supposed to be a health crisis, now it is also an economic crisis and also a social crisis, as we are seeing, like it's playing out all over the world. So before we will look into how it will impact our world, we should first see, like all crises, this always happen. Something will not happen like once we have first, the virus will not go away. As she mentioned, virus, we will have to start living with the virus, and that will be partially possible when we have the vaccine. So vaccine is important. It won't be like we can go around without the vaccine, we won't be able to go back to the previous world which we're living in, the way we were living in. So what all the crises do is, they don't create a new world out of the blue. So it won't happen that one day we will see some ground shattering thing happens. No, it won't happen. What it does is it accelerate the pace of things which are already happening. So all these things that we will talk about, what impact on globalization, impact on the world order, these things were already in rolling, they were rolling on. And what this virus will do, like all crises, it will just accelerate that. So generally, an event which would have taken, say, 10 years to unfold will now, we can say it can happen in 2 years or 3 years. So it is said that this crisis, like all crisis, is like an X-ray machines, which is like laying bare whatever the fault lines we had earlier, and whatever small crisis countries were brushing under the carpet, or were like trying to tone it down, they will all come out in the open in times to come. So uh so as you know, that Germany's chancellor, she famously said that for Germany, this is the biggest crisis about after World War II. So we should be assured that we are seeing history in making. I mean, this is historic, and years down the line, we will talk about the way we talk about wars and other things which shape the world. So what happened? Let's just touch upon how we responded after the World War II ended. So and that will give us a hint how we will pick the pieces after this crisis ends. So if you if you have to pin one reason to why World War II happened, it is said that it happened because of this aggressive, violent nationalism of Germany, which was based on this idea of German supremacy and establishment of German Reich. So what the world, when this, I mean, when the war was over and everything was destroyed and, you know, the countries were struggling, what they did, that they sat together and they said, like, just sit together and think what went wrong and how we can fix this for future so that we never have a war to fight again. So what this suggested as an antidote to that aggressive nationalism, that let's become more connected, let's become more interconnected and interdependent. So what happens when we have shared interest in each other, we have, you know, we have economic interest in each other, so the countries are unlikely to go on an aggressive onslaught. They are, you know, unlikely to invade another country if the country has invested millions or billions of dollars in another country. So that was the idea that they zeroed upon, and which set the ball rolling for, they said that let's regulate the international relations in a way, you know, where we cooperate, where we, you know, become a part of one world, you know, that the creation of one world happened. And I mean, two, three important things that happened after that is, one is the formation of UN, so an international body, an overarching body where most countries had the representation, and it had then again, you know, diversified in different bodies. And then it also sowed the seeds of this European Union, which eventually formed in 1990s. But the small ideas were already pitching in when more countries joined in. So European, and thirdly, an important thing it did, it established America as a, you know, the global power, the number one power in the world. Because earlier America was also isolationist. You know, after First World War, it now drew itself in a shell, and after it joined World War II, it I mean, it gave this plan, which is called the Marshall Plan, which was aimed for rehabilitation of entire Western Europe. So these three important things happened. One, UN was created. Number two, European Union came into being, and America was the number one. So this is how the globalization was, you know, conceived, you can say, and it played out with other technological advancement which we made, like technology, you know, it just made it boom. So what globalization does, it's like a very casually used word, and we all know about it and we experience it, and probably we live in a world we can't believe that we will be able to be talking about moving out of globalization. So and many are calling it that maybe it's time to undo globalization, because the whole crisis the thing is being made because you know, people traveling out of China to all parts of it, and the fact that it's so easy to travel to all parts of world, you know, in within hours, and something like this to unfold. So what globalization did, it wove the world economy. So, you know, different economies, they got interconnected. And this stems from the basic fact that no country can support its own needs. I mean, if you have to compete at a global world, uh, then I mean, you have to depend on all of it, because North Korea is one country, if you can say, which is, you know, which still says that I want to be cut off from the globalization, and we know where it is. So all countries realize that our economies cannot function without being, you know, dependent or drawing on the strength of other countries. So they spelled out these factors and of globalization. One of it is division of labor. Just like in any organization, we see there is a division of labor as per the specialization. So depending on the skill of a person, depending on the resources of the person has, we divide the work in our office as it happens. So similarly, the world did the same. So they divided the labor. China was rich in a particular thing, in manufacturing. They have lots of you know, minerals, and they're very rich in resources. So those things shifted there. India emerged as the IT hub. So we got those kind of things to our country. So the whole one task was broken into modular things, and it was distributed all over the world. And probably say in America, they would just stitch it all together, and we had a product. So this specialization, division of labor, and modular approach marked globalization. But one very important thing which came under attack because of this virus was the establishment of the supply chain. So now things are being made in different part of the worlds, and you want it in America. So how will you have it? So you have to establish these supply chains. You can see, like, you can look at it as the networks, with which you can route these material to your own country. So these supply chains were the things that came under attack. So what China did when the uh, outbreak happened. So China is responsible for, say, 50% of all the medical supplies, most of the medical supplies that are made in the world. And if you talk about Europe, the part of world I am in, I mean, they just don't make most of the medicines and these kind of things. They just import, except for Switzerland land has one giant, but generally, I mean, they just get it. So when China decided that it will buy all these things, and it started importing, and the world on the other hand was not aware what they are going to face in times to come. So when China was recovering with all the things it made itself available by blocking the supply chain, which is like the basis of globalization. Other countries, when the time came to battle it out with the COVID-19, almost all countries you would have seen, they struggled with, we don't have masks, we don't have PPEs, we don't have these things. So it was a direct fallout of failing this very important, uh, you know, you can say pillar of globalization, which is having very fluid, very dynamic and reliable supply chain. So so that happened. And what globalization they did, and this supply chain things they did, we don't have stockpiling. I mean, we don't in world withdrew itself from this entire practice of stocking things. So Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, he says that it is fundamentally evil to store things. So because things, there are two things. One is the telecommunications, so we have technology to facilitate so many things. And second, transportation is so easy and quick, and even cheaper now, because we are so connected with flights and everything, multiple flights going on. So if I need something here in Switzerland tomorrow from India, if the world was functioning the way it was, there was, in all likelihood, there was a channel that I would have got that thing. So these two things, so technology and then cheap way of connecting to the world. So these things, what the whole concept of storing things got out of fashion. So now the countries were caught on a wrong foot. So they didn't have the stock, the supply chains were cut off, and I mean, they didn't know what to do. So now what will happen, countries will reimagine the supply chains. They will think that, what do we do if something like this happens again? So if you talk about me, then how I think globalization would change these things, then I think, I mean, I don't think this travel and everything would be affected once we have vaccine in place. Those things should resume. And to be honest, travel is just a small part of globalization, maybe most visible part as we see it, that I can travel to any part of the world and hence it's a globalization. But no, in its more economic sense, that globalization mattered. So I think it will make three things important. Number one, we will have diverse supply chain. We will not be dependent on a particular thing, a particular supply chain only. So what will countries do? The big countries, they will invest in having more supply chains. For some reason, if one country like China, it blocks the supply chain, we will have another country, say India, or say some country in Africa. They would have a buffer, or another option to fall back on. Second, what it could do, it will they will think about moving these supply chains closer. So since transportation and these things are disrupted, what they would think that India, instead of relying on something, say in America or in China, why not have it in, say, Sri Lanka? So they would want to have these supply chains closer to them. Similarly, America, they would want to invest in Africa, or say in Latin America, or India. So these kind of things are already in motion, and Word is thinking through these things. And So, and third thing which I think would be happening is more of use of technology. So as we saw when the crisis happened, the countries falling short of these kits and things, so they started using 3D printings and things like that. So technology would be put to more use, more thinking would be made. So how to cope with a situation like these. So, I mean, this is briefly how I think the globalization would impact us. The globalization would be changed in times to come in a post-COVID world, if I would say that. Second thing, let's then how global governance will, change in time to come. So first, let's get into this context. I mean, although all countries would like to be independent, but there is always this overarching, countries which act like the savior or like the big daddy of the world, like America used to do all the time. So almost the entire world is used to this concept. And but what happened, I mean, it's not just because of this crisis, but even after Trump came into power, I mean, he was into this protectionist policies. The cry of America first, make America great again, build the wall, all, and withdrawing from very important treaties which were rolling when the Obama administration went out of the power. So, what Trump was already doing all of these things. So he was withdrawing troops from different part of the world. He was withdrawing from treaties. He was withdrawing from the universal bodies which are there in global bodies. So these things were already in motion. So now, as things stand now, these things will get more you can say aggressive. So the one American official even threatened when they were. So what America did, it's like since 2009 they have not replenished their mask inventory. So I mean, they were caught on a very wrong foot. So they underestimated the challenge that would throw up in their way. So I mean, now they are and it is very important to note many things or many responses that America would be doing right now under Trump would be driven by the fact that they are going into an election very soon. So like every country does when there is an election, their response is more populist. And it's like basically to have their vote share intact. So so America is threatening to pull out of global trade and put more pressure on the other countries to cooperate and even give things to it, because it is struggling right now with figures like worst figures ever for any country so far. So what we can see is the demise, and I would like to say the death of Pax Americana. So America is this world leader, America as the international daddy. This image will be toned down, although much will depend after what happens in November. That is will be having a Trump 2.0 or not. But these things are going to stay. So what will happen when one global power, I mean, we had a bipolar world till 1991 when up till Soviet Union disintegrated. So after that, it's like America all the way for more than say 30 years now, about 30 years now. So what happens when America will recede? In all likelihood, or it is like absolutely sure that China would pitch in to fill that space, and it is already doing it. So now, if you see in all these international bodies, I mean, like Trump withheld the aid amount to WHO, and China has like extended that amount which it is paying. So China is very keen on establishing itself as the global leader, as the de facto superpower. And if America decides to cede some space and decides to, recede into its own shell, because after this crisis health, we have an economic crisis coming up for us. So if that hits America as hard as it is expected to be, we will see a larger role of China being played everywhere, be it health sector, militarily. I mean, China is already very aggressive in the South China Sea, claiming all the islands. And and I mean it's very difficult to predict how China works because of the kind of government they have, very authoritarian. Excuse me. So China, what is doing right now, it's doing the politics of generosity, as it is called. So what it is doing, it is sending aids to all kind of countries. And Even to America, it sent the aid. So almost all countries are indulging in this politics of generosity. India sent out aids to so many countries. America has yesterday, Trump tweeted that we will be sending ventilators to India. So this kind of politics is also happening. And if you see the role of America, so when AIDS happened, I mean, when America was in charge and it was very keen to play this role of, the most responsible world power. So what it did, it invested huge amount of money in research processes, in vaccination, in helping out countries which were worst affected by AIDS. So America has done that. It has invested lots of money in all these kind of crises. So now we will have to see what it does regarding this, and by the science of it. America has gone after immigration rules. So the H-1B visa people, they are going, I mean, he's after them also. So, I mean, as America becomes protectionist, we will have an aggressive China, I mean, to sum it up. And much will depend definitely on what happens in November, if Trump's come back or if we have a change in guard in White House. So it will depend on that. So this will also impact the regional, all the treaties that were there, because America is part of almost all major cooperative treaties and bodies. So I mean, these bodies were already having some kind of problem. So when UNSC met, they could not come to a common ground on this crisis. When G7 met, they could not finalize a name for this crisis, because America wanted it to be named Chinese virus, which the other countries thought it's not a wise thing to do right now. So and China is already playing very big in UN. I mean, it is investing huge amount of money. It's already in on the UN Human Rights Commission, which is such an irony, China being a part of the Human Rights Commission. But yeah, these things are happening, and how global power works, China is playing its cards very well. So yeah, so these kind of things we can see happening unless UN reinvents itself and the countries decide that we need to stay put behind these international bodies. We will see a very different role of these regional organization and international organization in days to come. uh, Thirdly, let's look at what when we talk about world order. I mean, as I said that I don't know if I mentioned. So what happened when USSR, that is the Soviet Union, disintegrated in 1991? When till then there were two blocks, so America and Soviet Union. So a historian, American historian, he gave this theory, Francis Fukuyama. He gave this theory that this is end of history. So he said that this is a win of the liberal world order, that is America and the similar kind of democracies, and that, I mean, going forward, there would be no going back. So going forward, we will just have democracy. So he said that the disintegration of USSR is a win of democracy, a liberal world order, as we say it. But right now, as we stand now, this liberal democracies are under attack. And it's not that it's happening because of the virus. It has been in play for quite a long time. Populist governments, authoritarian governments, they are enjoying the you know uh, more confidence of the people, because I mean, this kind of fatigue with liberal values, which shouldn't be happening, but it is happening. So these kind of things can happen. And what we will see is, in by talking about, we are trying to protect our country, by trying to say that we are doing it for your good, we will see a more onslaught on freedom and rights of people. So there will be more surveillance being deployed, and we will see more tighter border controls. Like, I live in Europe. I mean, we have just seamless border, so you can just hop on a bus, pass on the border, shop in I mean, we go for groceries to France, right? So because we are just on the border, so it's so easy. And it was just snapped in when the virus hit. So I mean, so we will be looking at a more, tighter border controls in days to come, and more stricter immigration. I mean, it will be tough. Like you see how UK bowed out of Brexit. There are other countries contemplating changes in their rules. So these things will play out very, very, quickly in days to come. In other times, it may have taken a longer time, but now I think it will be sped up. So, so these kind of things will happen. And what happens in crisis? What happens? Uh, People, they are like terrified. So you are, really worried of your life. You are worried, like you see these figures every day through those, push notifications saying that so many people dead here, America, 10,000 people dying in a day. So what happens is, not in a day, but several thousands people dying in a day. So so what happens, the people are like terrified, and they think that, I mean, they are okay. They become okay to bargain their rights and freedoms, in if they are assured that you will be safe. So this is one emotion that most countries would be, playing on, say, to say that you are secure. So they will say that, I mean, and even people would be like, okay, that if you are keeping me safe, then I am okay to give my rights away or freedom away. And what happens that it doesn't happen that once the crisis is over, you get your rights back. It doesn't happen. So once these, people who are in power, they get used to this idea of more subservient citizens who are taking your orders. So they get used to it like human beings. So they feel this pain to give those rights back to you. So maybe we will have, a bigger fight to fight after this crisis ends, after our rights are taken away. And I would like to quote, this professor of Harvard University. His name is Stephen Walt. So he said this: the pandemic will strengthen the state and reinforce nationalism. So we started from World War II, where we tried to move away from nationalism, and here he is predicting that we will move back to that kind of nationalism. And he said that governments of all types will adopt emergency measures to manage the crisis, and they will loath to relinquish these new powers when the crisis is over. So this is another change that we should be very, vocal about. And if you look at international media, how they are covering it, then almost every day they have this section about, you know to be very cautious, to, so some resistance to surveillance, to this, compulsory downloading an app like China did. So I mean, what China does, so if you land in China, they give you a gadget kind of thing. It will monitor all your movements, where are you going, whom are you meeting. But in China, I mean, you don't have an option. So even in democracies, if that becomes a thing like that, so that will be a privacy issue, a surveillance issue, and it will transform into a freedom and rights issue. So this primarily. And I think just one thing that is left is, if you can see some positive. So we have talked about a lot of negative things that we will be looking at. We would get a feeling of this, that everything is going to come down. But I mean, whatever crisis, I mean, it depends on what we make out of it. At the cliche thing says that, I mean, it depends on how you make up your response to it. So if what I thought that can be positive is, what I see as a very important positive is that is a break away from the, you know the usual definition of patriotism. So till now we have seen patriotism as, war, siding with the country, soldiers as as the, love your soldiers as a touchstone of patriotism. That is, as you see, is changing now. We are talking about our doctors as the warriors. We are talking about health workers as the warriors, our policemen as the warriors. So all those people who are, so this is shift from this patriotism seen in terms of military, and now this is a civic sense of patriotism. So if you are clean, you are patriotic. If you are maintaining social distance, you are patriotic. If you are, reporting, if you have an infection and if you're reporting it in time, then you're patriotic. So I mean, this is an entire shift on what we see patriotism as. And then there is this theory, I mean, I don't know, I mean, this is very conflicted, but there is this theory that I mean, that there will be peace because of this crisis. So what it says is, generally optimism is a ground for war. So when two countries which are involved in a conflict, and they think that they're optimistic about the chances to emerge victorious, they go for a war. So right now, as the things stand, every country is doubting, every country is pessimistic. They don't know where they will stand economically at the end of it all. So this pessimism is a good ground for peace. So countries which are already involved in conflicts, they will, be hesitant to go in a direct combat and direct war kind of situation. And it is already happening in UAE and Yemen. They had announced a ceasefire. Philippines, all the protests has been called out in Hong Kong. So these things are happening. So maybe we will have a more peaceful world, hopefully, once this is over. And then and the thing is the rise of global consciousness. So what is global consciousness is, see, this is a huge world. And even when the World War II happened, because it happened so long back, what happened, even that experience was not felt by a greater part of the world, because the colonial system was still in place. So although the war played out in, say, in Europe, Africans didn't know what was happening. So although the colonial powers did engage some of them. So but now this crisis, as we know it, is like 200 countries involved, and we have this shared experience. So all of them are going through same kind of trauma, same kind of feelings. And they have this shared memory of this crisis, to live through this crisis. So you have one person sitting in Italy who couldn't attend the funeral of his mother, and then similar thing has happened to someone in India and someone in America. So these kind of things build this consciousness, where we become more aware of the pain of the others, because we all are going through the same thing. So if I talk about what it means to be a lockdown, so probably you would also know what it means to be in a lockdown. So these kind of things, foster this unity, and we can say if it plays out in times to come, it will bring people together. So yeah, so that is one thing. And then we may see more cooperation in terms of when the vaccine is formed. So entire world is just jostling to, just get their hands on the vaccine, do the testing, and just make it available for the world. So I mean, I just saw that Trump had tweeted that we are working with India to get the vaccine. I mean, Indian scientists are working with America. So I mean, Trump America may have had some issues with India, but now, if I mean, I'm just saying, even if it had any issues with India, but now at this point of time, if they see that India is a big role, it has a big role to play in vaccine making, they would call it a truce. So this vaccine thing will also bring lot of countries together, a lot of people to work together, and a lot of philanthropists coming together to make it available to a large part of the world, which do not have as many resources as rich countries. So these kind of things would be happening. And what we can see is, maybe we'll be talking more seriously about universal healthcare, things like universal minimum income kind of things, which were already being talked about, but were not able to give in a shape. So as we see now, and we can also, like, as the migrant crisis is playing out in India, I mean, every day it's a nightmare to wake up, so many people dying. So maybe it will make us more aware of our privileges. We will be able to, we'll maybe think about more charity. We will try to make a more egalitarian society where we donate more. I mean, I am very sure most of us are doing more charity than we were doing earlier, because we are, all these, this whole divide which was there between the rich and the poor has been like exposed, and the ugly reality of this rich versus poor is like playing in front of our eyes. So maybe we will be more aware of these things, and I mean, maybe we will work for a better world. And one very important thing that most people are pegging their hopes on is, we will be more thinking more seriously about what will be the next crisis. So nobody saw this coming. We had plans, we had, weddings planned, we had sports event plan, tickets booked for vacation, and it just stopped happening. I mean, so people are thinking very carefully about what could be next. So climate change, which was usually underplayed because of the economic interest, and because Trump says there is no economy, there is no climate change. So now people would be more, more eager to think in an alternate way, and more eager to pool in more resources to see climate change being fought at a good level. So that can be one positive thing, that we will be thinking more about climate change as a problem, and working towards it so that it doesn't become a crisis like we are battling right now. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Did I take too long?
No, absolutely not, ma'am. It was a indeed wonderful session.
Yeah, please carry on.
Okay, so that was the four things that we I
Sir,
thought
sir.
I would cover, and I would like to briefly touch upon. I mean, for India, what the problem is, we are still in the middle of the crisis, so we don't know how it is going to play out in times to come, because we haven't hit the peak. So in Switzerland, for example, we have quite a functional country, more or less functional country now, but in India, I mean, if you ask me, I don't see when it's going to happen, because once you hit the peak, it still takes some time to, get out of that thing. So since we haven't hit the peak as yet, so I mean, it's very difficult to predict where India will go. But I definitely see a bigger role for India, because one thing is for sure, China, America are going to be, pitched in front of each other. So if, I mean, India, because of its location, second, because of its economy and the power, and it's foreign policy, which has been of non-alignment. So we have been close to Russia. Even when the Cold War was on, we have been close to America all through. So we have this bigger role to play, and if we get our economy right somehow, then when people will recalibrate, you know when countries would, like Japan moved a lot of factories out of China, and some of them would be coming to India. So most of the countries who are thinking, who are looking at China with a distrust now, they can be looking at India as an option to come back, to come to. And if we get to this strong middle position, then we can swing both ways, and we can have very good relation and beneficial relation with both US and China. And I mean, we are seeing this, that India is engaging in very clever foreign relations. So we saw Mr. Modi, Prime Minister Modi, calling for SARC meet soon after the crisis hit India. So which was SARC, and these kind of platforms were not given as much importance when Modi was in Modi 1.0 and Modi 2.0, but he did went back to it. He he became a part of NAM as well. For the two times he didn't go to the NAM meetings, but this time he did. Then we have SCO meeting that happened. So India is keeping all of its options open, and there is this new alignment called Quad Plus countries, which has India, US, Australia, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, and Vietnam. So these important countries which are doing well, and most of these countries have done well to beat the virus, be it Australia, except for US, Japan, South Korea. So these countries are in a stronger position right now, and if we are aligning with them, I think there will be benefit for us. And we can, and I mean, there is the soft power of our seriology, or we can say, because India is like, I mean, it's a big name in vaccine making. We have the biggest capacity of vaccine making in India. So there's this Serum Institute of India in Hyderabad. So no other company in the world can match the level of vaccine that company can make in a particular day, some 500 million or something like that. So they have made rotavirus. So a big portion of the vaccines that are used worldwide, they come from India. And we are like very good when it comes to vaccine making, quick vaccine making, bulk vaccine making. And plus our scientists are working with, I mean, not just US, with Germany, with other countries. So I mean, there is a big hope that it will bring these beneficial things to India. But we have a economic problem, we have a migrant problem as it is playing out. So if we are able to take care of these two things, we can use this crisis to our advantage, and maybe we will, we can use it to be a stronger India as in times to come. So yes.
All right, ma'am.
Mm.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for putting things into perspective for us. I want to add that you have really wonderfully covered both the dimensions, positive and negative, so really well. Indeed, it was an amazing performance, amazing session for all of us. Now we open the floor for question and answer session.
Yes, please.
If any participant wants to ask anything related with the issue, can ask.
Any of the participant is having any question, he may unmute his mic and ask the question directly.
You may also leave the question on the chat box.
No.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, to ask. Yes.
Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself and ask your question.
This is Sunil Bajpayee from Devas. I want to ask a question to ma'am. What is the peak time for India, do you think?
See, it's very difficult to say. See, what happens is there's this just one approach. So you test, you trace, and then you isolate. So this is the three. So unless you are testing as much, you won't be able to hit the peak. So the whole point of lockdown is to just reach the peak, to accelerate the peak. So just reach there as soon as possible, get done with it, and get going. So what India did, it has not tested enough for some reason, and the kind of population we have, we live very close by. Even our working space is so cramped. We don't have so much thinking going into that. So I mean, basically we have a population problem, and and we reacted a little late. So I mean, if they ramp up testing, then only we can have a sense of when we will hitting a peak sometime in, say, June, mid-June or end June, and it will entirely depend on the testing. So from here, if we talk about Switzerland, we went in a, I mean, we didn't have a lockdown basically. So because these Western countries, if you talk about Switzerland, it's a very small country. It's in the whole, if you know, of course, you would be knowing. So just to give a sense of the population, its population is 8 million, which is, and the population of just Delhi is 18 million. So it's half of Delhi's population. So we didn't have a lockdown. So because these countries are, you can say, US or these liberal democracies, so they value free citizens' right. So they find it very off, telling people that you have to be locked down, because they think it's like the right, taking away your right, because we are humans, and they think that this right of staying inside, I mean, they just think that it's not okay to just tell others, because of course it's a crisis and we have to take measures. So so we didn't have a strict lockdown. We were allowed to go out, but on 16th of March, that was when it was announced that schools will shut, and colleges and offices were shut. And today, what is it, again 16th, and we already have schools opened, most of the shops open. So what they did, just quickly tested. So what testing does, it will give you a spike. You will see numbers rising, you will see, oh my god, everything is going to come down. So that will happen. If you test more, you will get more number of positives. But what happened after the time it stabilized, after getting stabilized, started coming low. So one point of time we were getting 1,000 cases in a day, multiple thousand cases in a day. Now it's down to, say, 50, 20 cases in a day. So that's what testing does. You got to test. That's the only way. So you cannot hide the virus. I mean, if you're hiding the virus, you will end up infecting more people. So maybe in June, July, if they test more, they just do it at the war footing, we will be having a peak. And then for the one month, for the peak subsides, and we get back to what we were.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I would like to have a question. Can I have?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yes, please.
So ma'am, it's Professor Namadip Singh from Vishisht School of Management. My question is, as you are from Switzerland, uh, what this pandemic will affect the tourism and the restaurant business all over the world?
Uh, Definitely. I mean, the tourism industry. I don't know if you have seen that video of this owner of this big hotel chain. He actually cried on this on this that video. I mean, it has actually crashed. So now we will be seeing, once we open up, we will be seeing a lot of investment going up. Plus, lot of schemes coming up, like Switzerland is almost open, so they have this guideline for how to follow social distancing in even in trains and things like that, but they are trying to open it up. So like, it is the worst hit aviation industry, that are the flights, and hotel tourism industry, the worst hit. I mean, most of the work, like your work, you can have lectures online. IT industry, they can work from home, but this just doesn't work like that. So it is very, very badly hit. And but Switzerland, it's a rich country, they're pumping a lot of money, and let's see how it happens. But yeah, they are badly hit.
Any more questions?
Okay, I have a fun question. First of all, I'm Dr. Pooja Chatterjee from Calcutta University. So congratulations, Zoya. It was a lovely session.
Thank
So
you
I
very
just,
much.
yeah, extremely
I
well
just
said.
tried to make sense.
No, it was
It's
very
so
good.
chaotic.
It
I
was
mean,
very good.
there are just so many aspects, because if you go into economic aspect, it is unending. So I just tried
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
just
No,
clubs. Yeah,
you have beautifully summarized the entire thing, giving
thank
a
you.
very nice picture. So I have one question to you. I mean, just
Yes.
your what is your take on this? You beautifully said something like the crisis. During crisis, the optimism is a ground for war, right?
Yeah.
And pessimism is a ground for peace.
Yeah.
So what is your take? Is the need for the hour is to be a pessimist right now? Is that the need for the hour? This is what my question is.
I mean, pessimistic in the sense, I mean, we should be, I mean, be realist, I would say. I mean, we should be aware that an economic crisis is coming our way. We should not be wishing away that once we are able to have a vaccine, everything would be away. There is a massive, I mean, almost all the experts, I mean, I have my relatives working for Reliance 1 month back, where they were saying that the company has said we will pay you for 6 months, maybe even if we are required to. 1 month into the crisis, they have announced a pay cut. So
Right.
things are not as good as they look. Some leaders would say that we will be okay. No, things are not okay, and we have to be realist. So if you go for a war, forget
Right.
being optimistic or pessimistic. If you think it makes sense to invest millions and billions for not just money, I mean, you are losing people as well. So I think
Yeah.
if countries will just have this realist approach, that there are bigger crises coming our way. Many investors have said that this is worse than 2008. So 2008 brought the world to its knees. I mean, that was the time that I graduated, I did my BTech, I struggled getting a job. So I mean, there were all the recruitments were put on hold, and now they are saying that this is worse than that. So already the economy was going down, most countries were not doing well, they were already hinting at some time of crisis coming up, and now this has compounded those worries. So it makes really sense to just stay grounded and lie low, and you know
Right.
tend to the immediate crisis that you have, that is the economic crisis, and also a social crisis. I mean,
True.
yeah, I mean, and then
Yeah,
I'll
that's
go,
true.
if I go into the philosophy, I mean, and humans, I mean, there's always been this debate that are humans basically good or basically evil. So this has been a long debate in
Yeah.
philosophy, that what is the basic nature of humans. So if you are pushed through the wall, and you said that I mean, you are at a loss, you see a visible big loss in front of you. So what does average human choose? Will he choose to be nice to others? Will he choose to be selfish, greedy, bad? So there has been this debate all through the history of philosophy, and the basic nature of humans. Are they good basically, or are they bad basically? So these kind of things, I think, will be justified in days to come. we are seeing a lot of charity being done, so we can say humans are basically good, people sharing their things. But then we are seeing, even the owners not paying, even like, I mean, maids not being paid. How
Right,
much are they
right.
paid? 1,000, 2,000 bucks. So they are not doing it. So I mean, it depends, so let's,
Yeah,
if we
yeah.
have a bigger share of goodness, it would be good for the world.
Right. Thank you,
I
Zoya.
hope I
Thank you.
made sense.
Yeah, yeah, you did. Thank you. Thank you
No
so
worries,
much.
no worries.
Any more questions?
No, I think.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I think we are done with the question answer round. I want to thank you again, Zoya ma'am. You have very well explained all the questions.
My pleasure.
Thanks one again. Now I request Professor Ranjana Rajak to please present vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
please. Yeah, I warmly welcome to our Honorable Managing Director, Dr. Naveen Narang, who is also with us. So I
Hello.
request you to please sum up with few words.
So please.
Me, sir.
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Zoya, first of all, for sparing time. I know, time is
No, no,
one
no,
thing
no.
which is very.
Not at all,
So
not at
thank
all.
you
Don't
so
mention that.
Yeah. And again, your knowledge on the topic was really deep, and you've covered all the aspects. I hope सभी के लिए एक अच्छा सेशन रहा होगा. So
I really hope so.
and congratulations, your country is out of the crisis. We still have some
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, we are still hoping we don't hit a second wave, because that's how these viruses work. So Germany is
yeah.
struggling with, I mean, we have Germany on one side, Italy on one side, France on one side, all, doing really bad. I mean, Italy struggling, France struggling. So, I mean, we are hoping we don't reach a second wave, but Germany is having its second wave. France is going out. So, yeah, let's hope for the best. Yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, this is one virus which has really of our existence, which is socializing, globalizing. So this virus has really brought us back to our roots. So these are
true,
the times that we have to face ahead, and one should be ready for such times. So the more you are within your family, the more rooted you are, the more you are, the more you're conservative with your resources, the brighter the future holds for you.
true, true.
So, looking at these harsh realities, I would again like to express my gratitude to all the participants also, and
Yeah,
to Vishisht family who's taken this opportunity to engage such a session. I hope
yeah,
and I pray to God that the virus comes to an end as soon as possible, and
true.
we get back to our normal self, or the renewed normal self.
Yeah,
So,
better,
but
better.
basically everything has to get back to normal. So thank
Yeah,
you again so
it's
much,
so tiring.
and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no problem. Thank
Take
you very
care.
much.
Be
You
good.
too.
Have a healthy life there. Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care of your family.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Naveen Narang. I would again thanks Mrs. Zoya Rasul. Thank you, Dr. SM Anas Iqbal, and all the dear participants for sharing your time with us. Thank you.
Now I request Professor Ranjana Rajak to propose vote of thanks.
Good afternoon to respected
Kitna
Mrs.
thanks.
Zoya Rasul, Dr.
It's
Naveen Narang, and Dr. S.M. Anas Iqbal, all participants and dear students. I, Professor Ranjana Rajak, on behalf of Vishisht School of Management, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our today's guest for gracing with her words. It was indeed a privilege to have Mrs. Zoya Rasul, an eminent and independent journalist, writer from Switzerland. Her insight lecture on Will COVID-19 Reshape the World was full of wisdom and information. You have made us clear all the aspects in this pandemic condition and summarized it beautifully. So thank you so much, ma'am,
true.
for your presence.
Thank you
I
so
would
much. Pleasure was entirely mine, and it's very weird to be referred as ma'am. So let's keep it Zoya. And I would just say, stay positive, all of you. It's a harsh reality. Let's not hide, under the sand and say that it's just okay and we will go back to the world as it was. Let's stay positive, help each other as much we can, because we have our own set of problems in India. So I mean, let's go be good, yeah, and take care of yourself, do social distancing. Even when things open, don't just go out only when it's necessary. I mean, my daughter went out after say full 2 months. I mean, we have a grocery shop just downstairs, and here they have these sanitization things, or everything is well sanitized, but we didn't take her out for 2 full months. So I mean, just be more cautious until we have a vaccine, because so yes, take care, be responsible.
Yes, thank you everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye. Yeah,
Thank you
that's
so
it.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. We'll see you in our upcoming event. Thank you so much,
Maybe.
everyone.
Yes. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Yeah,
Bye.
bye bye.